The diner was nearly empty that evening. The soft hum of the neon sign outside was barely audible over the low buzz of the few lingering customers. Claire wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time, her movements automatic, mind elsewhere. The fluorescent lights above cast a dull glow on her worn waitress uniform. The fabric faded from years of wear, but the exhaustion in her eyes told the real story. At 27, Claire had endured more hardship than most, yet her spirit remained quietly resilient. She worked these late shifts alone, barely making enough to get by, always holding back the weight of a past that clawed at her heart. As she stacked another set of plates in the kitchen, the bell over the door jingled sharply. She looked up, expecting the usual late-night stragglers, but instead, a man stepped inside. He was out of place in this humble diner, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that shimmered subtly under the diner's harsh lights. His hair was salt and pepper, neatly combed back, and his posture bore the confidence of a man who commanded boardrooms rather than late-night eateries. He scanned the room quickly before his gaze locked on Claire. Recognition flickered in his eyes, but there was something deeper, something heavy and complicated. Without a word, he pulled a worn leather wallet from his jacket pocket and placed it carefully on the counter. Claire's curiosity was piqued. She glanced down, and her breath caught in her throat. There, tucked inside the wallet, was a faded photograph, a small, fragile snapshot of a little girl about 6 years old. The child's hair was tangled and unkempt, her smile wide but missing a front tooth, clutching a battered stuffed bunny close to her chest. The photo's edges were soft and curling, yellowed with time, and yet despite its age, it held an undeniable energy, a quiet story waiting to be told. The man's fingers trembled as he rested them near the picture, his knuckles white with emotion. Claire's heart pounded. She looked at the man, then back at the photo. The years seemed to fold over her in a wave of forgotten memories and long-suppressed pain. How could this stranger possess a photo of her? Why had he carried it for so long? The questions flooded her mind, but she barely had time to process before the man's voice broke the silence. "You don't remember me, do you?" he said, his tone low, almost reverent. Claire shook her head, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think I've ever seen you before." The man sighed deeply, a sound weighted with regret and longing. "I've been carrying this photograph for more than 20 years. It's been with me through every major moment of my life, yet I never knew the full story. Until now. Years ago, Claire's life had been a patchwork of broken pieces. Abandoned at an orphanage when she was just 4, she had clung fiercely to a single precious item. A small photograph she'd found hidden in the pocket of the only sweater she owned. It was the same photo now in the man's wallet, the one she had kept close like a talisman through lonely nights and cold mornings. That photo was all she had of her past, all she had of a family she never knew. It was her only connection to a world that had otherwise forgotten her existence. For years, she'd carried it silently, hoping that one day it would unlock answers. A door to a life she was meant to live, but had never been given. Victor Harlan was a man who had built his empire from the ground up, a billionaire investor known for his ruthless business acumen and icy demeanor. But beneath the veneer of success, there was a story few knew. Years ago, before his life was consumed by board meetings and mergers, Victor had loved a woman named Lila, a passionate, complicated soul who had held secrets darker than anyone could imagine. They had shared a brief but intense chapter, and somewhere within that whirlwind, a child was born. Victor never saw the child. Lila left one morning without warning, vanishing with only a single photo in her hand. No explanations, no goodbyes, just silence. For years, Victor held on to that photo, his only connection to a past he couldn't reclaim and a child he feared he might never find. The image haunted him in quiet moments, tucked safely inside the leather wallet he carried everywhere. The girl in the photo had eyes that mirrored his own, a small spark of something familiar that refused to fade. He searched quietly, using all his resources to locate the mother, then the child. But both had disappeared without a trace, leaving Victor with nothing but questions and a growing ache of regret. Back in the diner, Claire's world tilted on its axis as Victor's words settled over her. "You're saying my mother worked for you? You knew her?" Her voice wavered with disbelief. Victor nodded slowly, the hard edge in his eyes softening for a fleeting moment. "She did. She worked in my household years ago. We were involved. But one day she left. Without a word, without a trace. The only thing she left behind was that photograph." He gestured to the picture on the counter. The revelation struck Claire like a lightning bolt. Everything she had believed about her origins, about abandonment and loss, suddenly felt incomplete. "I thought I was forgotten," she whispered. "I thought no one wanted me." "You were never forgotten," Victor said quietly. "She left to protect you, to shield you from things I never understood. Maybe from me. I don't know." Claire's hands trembled as she reached for the photo, her fingers tracing the faded outline of her younger self. For the first time in years, the possibility of answers felt within reach. The hollow emptiness that had shadowed her childhood flickered with hope. Later that night, alone in the diner's storage room, Claire sat on a milk crate, holding the photo in her lap like a fragile treasure. The cracked mirror above her reflected a woman hardened by years of struggle, but softened by the promise of something new. She stared at her reflection, the child in the photo looking back at her with innocent eyes, reminding her of a past she had tried to bury. What if her story didn't begin at the orphanage? What if there was someone out there who had loved her, who had fought to find her all along? Her thoughts were interrupted by the quiet steps of Victor, who had stayed behind to speak with her once more. He approached slowly, his gaze steady but kind. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said gently, "but I want you to know the truth. And if you want, I want to be a part of your life now, not as a businessman, not as some distant figure, but as someone who cares." Claire looked up, searching his face for sincerity. "I don't need charity," she said firmly. "I don't want money or favors. I just want to know the truth about who I am." Victor nodded. "Then that's what I'm here to give you." Weeks passed, and a cautious friendship formed between them. Victor introduced Claire to parts of the life she never dreamed existed. The sprawling estate, the quiet gardens where her mother had once walked, the archives filled with memories long buried. Yet, what mattered most were the quiet moments. Sharing stories, uncovering pieces of a puzzle that neither had known how to complete alone. Claire learned of the sacrifices her mother had made, the reasons behind her sudden disappearance, and the depth of Victor's regret for failing to protect them both. One afternoon, in the grand study of Victor's mansion, the childhood photo was finally framed and placed on the mantel, a symbol of a story no longer hidden. Claire stood by the fireplace, feeling a mix of emotions swirling inside her: pain, hope, anger, and something she hadn't felt in years: belonging. Victor stood nearby, sipping coffee, his eyes watching her with an unfamiliar softness. "You came back," he said quietly. Claire smiled, a tremor of vulnerability breaking through her guarded exterior. "I still don't have all the answers. But I know one thing: I'm not scared anymore." "Welcome home," Victor whispered. The journey was far from over. But for the first time, Claire felt the warmth of a family she'd been searching for all her life. The billionaire's wallet that once held a faded photo now carried a new story, one of healing, reunion, and the unexpected bonds that can change everything.